The galaxy was wide and filled with light, yet the Viori Confederation felt only shadows closing in. Their fleets were thin, their soldiers tired, and their hopes nearly gone. For years they had fought the Zith Horde, a ruthless force that swept across systems like a storm. Every time the Viori believed they could hold the line, the Zith brought more ships, more fire, more hunger for conquest. On the council floor, in the shining chamber above the capital world, silence hung heavy. The councillors of the Viori stared at one another. The maps above their heads glowed with red, showing worlds already lost. Blue lines, the ones that mark safety, were shrinking fast. Soon there would be nowhere left to run. Councillor Marone spoke first, his voice tired. We have reached the end. Our fleets cannot last another year. We must seek aid. The word aid carried a weight that made others shift uncomfortably. The Viori had long believed themselves strong, wise, and advanced. They had stood as peacekeepers for centuries. To ask for help felt like defeat. But the truth was written on every map. Councillor Ilra, the youngest on the floor, leaned forward. We must send a signal beyond our borders. Let it reach every corner of the stars. If there are those who can hear us, let them answer. Others doubted. Who would risk standing against the Zith? The Horde had already crushed 3 great powers and burned countless colonies. To fight them was to invite ruin. Still, with no path left, the vote passed. The signal was prepared. It was simple but desperate. A beacon of distress calling across the void, carried on strong waves of energy, repeated endlessly. We are under attack. We are losing. If you have strength, stand with us. Days turned to weeks. The council waited. The signal reached the stars, but silence answered back. Many believed no one would come. Then, one morning, a small alert lit the chamber wall. A reply had been received. The message was short. The voice that spoke was firm and direct. We are humans, from the planet Earth. We heard your call. We are coming. At first, the council thought it was a mistake. Who were these humans? Their name was not known among the great powers of the galaxy. Their world did not appear on the old maps. Some wondered if this was a trick, perhaps even a trap set by the Zith themselves. But the signal was real, and the humans sent coordinates of their fleet's path. Debate broke out at once. They cannot help us, said Councillor Darrell, shaking his head. If they were strong, we would know their name. They must be a minor people with little to give. Ilra disagreed. They heard our call, when no one else answered. Do not cast them aside before they even arrive. Marone raised his hand to calm the voices. Let them come. Even a small ally is better than none. Word spread quickly through the Confederation. Many reacted with disbelief. Others with laughter. But beneath it all was a small spark of hope. Perhaps these strangers carried something different, something the Zith would not expect. Weeks later, the first human fleet arrived in Viori space. The council gathered at the great docks of the capital to witness it. The Viori expected sleek ships with shining silver hulls, the kind most civilizations built to show their power. Instead, what came through the jump gate were dark and heavy vessels, scarred as if they had already survived 100 wars. Their shapes were blunt, their armor thick, their weapons large and clear for all to see. The humans did not hide their strength behind polished beauty. Their ships looked like predators moving in formation, dangerous and unafraid. When the docking was complete, the human commander stepped forward. His name was Hale, a man with steady eyes and calm movements. He did not bow, but he did not stand proud either. He simply looked at the Viori leaders and spoke with plain words. We heard your call. We will fight with you. His tone was simple, almost too simple. But there was no doubt in it. The councillors exchanged quiet looks. These humans were not what they had expected. They carried themselves not as diplomats, but as warriors who had already walked through fire. That night, whispers spread through the capital. Who were these people? Where had they come from? And how had they survived long enough to reach the stars with such strength? The Viori did not yet understand. They could not know what it meant to come from a world like Earth, a world where storms crushed cities, where beasts hunted in the wild, where survival was not given but earned every day. But they would learn. For now, the Confederation felt the faint stir of hope. Help had come. And with it came a new shadow, one not of fear, but of power waiting to be unleashed. The humans had answered. And the war was about to change. The first sight of human soldiers left the Viori unsettled. They had expected allies who looked fragile, maybe thin and soft like so many other starfaring species. Instead, the humans stepped out of their transports with a calm strength in their movements. Their bodies were heavier, their faces marked with quiet discipline, and their eyes carried the look of people who had seen too many storms. Commander Hale led them down the docking ramp. His uniform was plain compared to the decorated clothing of Viori officers. No jewels, no glowing colors, no woven symbols of rank. Only cloth and armor, made for use, not for show. Behind him marched his soldiers in neat lines, every step the same, every hand steady on their weapons. Counselor Marone whispered to Ilra as he watched. They look more like survivors than soldiers. Ilra replied softly, perhaps that is what makes them dangerous. The humans spoke little at first. They followed Hale's signals, moved with practiced order, and carried heavy crates of equipment with their own hands rather than waiting for machines. Viori workers stared in silence. It was rare for soldiers of any species to load their own supplies, but these humans seemed used to it, as if trust in machines was a luxury they could not always afford. Later, in the council chamber, the first formal meeting took place. The Viori leaders stood tall in their robes, while the human officers gathered behind Hale, their uniforms stained with marks from travel. Councillor Darrell began the talks. We thank you for coming. But before we accept your aid fully, we must understand why would you risk your people in a war that is not yours. Hale looked directly at him. His answer was short. Because you asked. The councillors exchanged confused glances. To them, such a reason was too simple. Wars were fought for resources, for territory, for survival of one's own people, not for strangers light years away. Darrell pressed further. You gain nothing from this. If you fight with us, you may lose your fleets, your worlds, your people. Why would you do this? Hale did not raise his voice. Because we know what it means to face extinction alone. The chamber fell silent at those words. There was weight in them, a truth spoken without pride or decoration. Ilro leaned forward. Your world Earth, what is it like? For the first time, Hale's eyes softened. It is a hard place. Storms tear across its oceans. Quakes shake its mountains. Beasts hunt in its forests. Even the air can burn your lungs in some places. For thousands of years, our people fought the world itself before we ever built ships. Survival made us what we are. A murmur spread among the Viori. They had heard of such planets, harsh and wild, but most civilizations never rose from them. Worlds like that were called death worlds, places where life was constant struggle. To think that humans came from such a place and not only lived, but reached the stars was difficult to believe. Hale continued, when we fight, we do not fight because we want to. We fight because if we don't, we vanish. That is why we are here. The council ended the session without further debate. They needed time to think. That night, Viori citizens filled the streets, trying to glimpse the newcomers. The humans stayed together in their camps, training even after long travel. Their voices carried across the fields, steady commands and sharp replies, while their movements created patterns of discipline the Viori had never seen. Some whispered in awe. Others in fear. But all agreed on one thing: the humans were not like anyone else. A week later, the humans were invited to observe the Viori fleet. The council wanted to show them their ships and their ways of war. Sleek vessels of white and silver drifted through space, their designs beautiful, their defenses layered with energy shields. To the Viori, this was a display of their proudest strength. But when Hale stepped aboard, he walked through the shining halls with a quiet frown. He admired the craftsmanship but asked simple questions. How do your shields react if struck too many times in one place? How many days of food can you carry if your supply lines are cut? How long can your crews fight without rest? The Viori commanders were unsettled by such questions. Their strategies had always depended on avoiding heavy losses, on slow retreats and strong defenses. But Hale spoke as if battle was not a thing to be avoided, but something to be endured until the enemy broke. Later, in a private meeting, Ilra asked him, "Why do you see war this way?" Hale looked at her calmly. "Because war has never been a choice for us. It is part of our survival. We do not ask if it is fair. We only ask if we can endure it long enough to win." The answer disturbed her, but it also lit a spark of respect. By the end of the month, human ships joined the patrols along Viori borders. Where the Viori flew with smooth grace, the human ships moved like hunters, always in attack formation, always prepared to strike. Their presence unsettled many, but for the first time in years, the people felt something new. Not fear. Not despair. It was the quiet rise of hope. The humans had been in Viori space for only a few weeks, yet already the differences between the two allies grew clear. The Viori were careful planners, cautious and deliberate. They studied each move for days before acting. Their fleets were built for defense, with strong shields and wide formations designed to protect every ship. To them, war was about patience, about surviving long enough to tire out the enemy. Humans were not like that. Their fleets moved fast, always pressing forward, always seeking an opening. Their ships carried heavy armor and weapons meant to strike with full force. Their soldiers trained to rush toward danger rather than wait for it. To them, war was not something to delay, it was something to end quickly, no matter the cost. This difference soon became the subject of debate in the Grand Council chamber. Councillor Darrell was the first to speak against the humans. He stood tall before the gathered leaders, his long robe swaying as he raised his hand. "These humans are reckless. They speak of attack, of charging into enemy space, as if they wish to bring the Zith down upon us faster. Their way is not survival, it is destruction." Others nodded in agreement. To the Viori, patience had always been the path. The Zith were brutal, but even they could be delayed with careful retreats and layered defenses. The Viori believed in avoiding losses, not seeking them. Commander Hale was present in the chamber, standing at the center with his officers behind him. He listened in silence, his face calm, until the voices grew louder. Then he stepped forward. "You believe defense will save you," he said evenly. "But defense alone only slows the enemy. The Zith will not stop. They will keep coming, system by system, until nothing is left." Councillor Marone narrowed his eyes. "And you believe the answer is to throw ourselves at them? To risk everything in one strike? That is madness." Hale shook his head. "It is not madness. It is understanding the enemy. The Zith fight because they think they cannot be stopped. They believe fear will win them every battle before it begins. If you show them that fear does not hold us, that we will strike back harder than they can endure, then they will learn that even they can fall." The council chamber fell quiet for a moment. Hale's voice carried no anger, only certainty, which unsettled many. Ilra, who had listened carefully, finally spoke. "Perhaps there is wisdom in both ways. Defense alone has not saved us. Attack without thought may destroy us. But together, maybe we can find balance." Darrell shook his head firmly. "Balance will not come from those who live by violence. Look at their soldiers. Look at their ships. They carry scars as if they are proud of them. Is this who we want leading us into war? Hale answered without hesitation. Scars are proof that we endured. On Earth, survival gave us no other choice. You see wounds. We see lessons. The debate stretched on for hours. Some feared the humans would bring chaos. Others believed the humans might be the spark they needed. In the end, no decision was made. The alliance would continue, but the question of strategy hung heavy in the air. Outside the council, the tension was clear among the fleets. Viore captains spoke in quiet voices, wondering if they should trust these newcomers. Human officers, in turn, grew restless at the slow pace of Viore decision-making. Where the Viore wanted to calculate every step, humans wanted to move, to act. The first real test came sooner than anyone expected. Scouts reported a Zith raiding fleet moving toward a border colony. The council gathered once again, voices sharp with urgency. Some demanded retreat, arguing that the colony was too far to save. Others demanded a fleet be sent at once. Hale stood before them, his eyes steady. Send us. We will hold them. The chamber erupted. Many shouted against it. Daryl nearly rose from his seat in anger. You would risk everything on a single battle. You will bring ruin on us all. But Ilra's voice cut through the noise. And if they can win? If they can do what we cannot? Should we not give them the chance? At last, the decision was made. The humans would lead the defense. A small Viore force would accompany them to observe. It was a compromise, but the weight of it was clear. When Hale returned to his fleet, his officers saluted. They needed no speeches, no grand promises. They knew what was coming. Prepare the ships, Hale ordered. We move at dawn. As the human fleet gathered, the Viore ships joined them, sleek and cautious beside their scarred, heavy allies. The difference in design was striking, like two worlds moving side by side. The Viore soldiers whispered among themselves, uncertain of what was to come. The humans moved with silent focus, preparing weapons, running drills, checking every system twice. For the first time, both fleets would face the Zith together. The clash of doctrines was no longer just words in a chamber. It was about to be tested in fire. The colony of Reiner was small, but to its people it was home. Fields stretched across its plains, and towers of light reached toward the sky. Families lived there with the belief that the Confederation could keep them safe. But now, alarms rang through every street. The Zith raiding fleet was coming. Above the colony, human ships and Viore ships formed their lines. The difference between them was clear. The Viore spread wide, their silver vessels protecting each other with linked shields. They moved in graceful arcs, almost like dancers in the sky. The humans, by contrast, gathered close in a sharp wedge, their black and scarred ships pointing straight at the enemy approach. Commander Hale stood on the bridge of his flagship, his hands clasped behind his back. His crew moved with speed and order, eyes fixed on their stations. He spoke only a few words. Hold steady. Wait for my mark. In the Viore flagship nearby, Captain Cyril watched with unease. To him, the human formation looked reckless. They are too close together, he muttered. If the enemy strikes the center, they will be broken. But the humans did not seem worried. Moments later, the Zith appeared. Their ships were dark and jagged, bristling with weapons. They came in a swarm, moving fast and hungry, eager to tear apart the colony. The battle began with a storm of fire. Energy bolts lit the void, streaking between fleets. The Viore shields shimmered as they caught the first wave, glowing bright with each strike. Their ships held back, moving carefully, always keeping their defenses linked. The humans did the opposite. At Hale's order, their wedge formation cut forward, right into the heart of the swarm. Heavy cannons roared, sending bursts of light that smashed through Sith armor. Missiles streaked ahead, breaking enemy lines apart. On the Viori bridges, officers stared in shock. The humans were not dodging. They were not falling back. They were charging straight into the fire. Madness, Captain Cyril whispered. But then his eyes widened as the result became clear. The Sith were not prepared for such an attack. Used to enemies that feared them, they now faced a force that met them head-on. Human ships rammed into gaps in the swarm, forcing the Sith to scatter. Each time a human vessel was struck, it returned fire twice as hard. Even when shields failed, the humans fought on with raw armor and wool. On the ground below, the people of Reiner looked up to see flashes in the sky. They feared the worst, yet slowly the pattern became clear: the enemy was faltering. Inside his flagship, Hale gave calm orders. Push through. Break their center. Do not let them regroup. His officers replied with firm voices. There was no fear, only focus. They had trained for battles like this, battles where survival meant pressing harder than the enemy could endure. But victory did not come without cost. One human destroyer took a direct hit to its engines. Fire tore across its hull as it drifted. Yet even then, its guns kept firing until the last moment, clearing a path for its allies. Another ship, its shields gone, rammed into a Sith cruiser, breaking it apart in a blaze of light. The Viori watching were stunned. To them, such sacrifice was unthinkable. Yet the humans treated it as part of war, not as despair, but as purpose. At last, the Sith line cracked. Their ships scattered, some destroyed, others fleeing into the dark. The humans did not chase far. They stopped once the colony was safe, regrouping in tight formation. The battlefield fell quiet. Debris floated across the stars, glowing faintly from burning metal. Among the wrecks, the colony of Reiner still stood. Its people cheered as the danger passed. On the Viori flagship, Captain Cyril sat in silence. His crew looked at him, waiting for words, but he had none. The humans had done what he thought impossible: they had broken a Sith swarm and saved a colony through direct assault. In the council chamber later, the report of the battle spread. Some praised the humans. Others warned that their way was too costly. Dozens of human lives had been lost. Yet Hale spoke plainly when asked about the price. Every life we lost bought safety for thousands more, he said. On Earth, that is the choice we have always lived with. We endure the cost because the alternative is extinction. The chamber was quiet. No one argued with him, though unease remained. For the Viori people, the sight of human courage became a story told across the stars. Children whispered of the black ships that cut through the Sith. Workers painted symbols of human vessels on their walls. The word spread fast: perhaps the Confederation had found more than just allies. Perhaps they had found protectors who did not fear the fire of war. And so the balance began to shift. For the first time in years, the Sith had retreated. And for the first time, the Viori believed victory might be possible. The victory at Reiner spread quickly through the Confederation. For the first time in years, the Sith had been forced to retreat, and the people felt hope stir inside their hearts. Yet the hope was shadowed by something else: the cost. When the reports arrived, they showed heavy losses among the human fleet. A destroyer had been lost completely, its crew gone. Another ship had suffered damage so severe it would never fly again. Many soldiers lay in the medical bays, wounded but alive. To the Viori Council, the numbers were shocking. Their way of war had always been to avoid such sacrifice. They believed a lost ship was failure, and lost lives were tragedies to be prevented at all costs. To see the humans accept these losses as part of victory was something they could not understand. The council summoned Commander Hale once more. The chamber was filled with sharp voices. Councillor Darrell spoke first, anger clear in his tone. You call this victory? You lost ships, you lost people. You risk too much. This is not the way of survival. Hale stood calm, his hands behind his back. The colony stands safe. The Zith were broken. That is survival. Councillor Marone leaned forward, troubled. But how can your people endure such loss again and again? We cannot fight this war if each battle drains us of lives and ships. It is unsustainable. For a moment, Hale said nothing. Then he spoke slowly, his words carrying the weight of truth. On Earth, survival has never been gentle. We grew strong because we had no other choice. Every storm, every predator, every trial taught us the same lesson: endure, no matter the cost. If we lost one village, another carried on. If we lost one battle, we learned and rose again. We did not vanish because we refused to yield. That is why we still stand. His words filled the chamber with silence. Many Viori shifted in unease, but none could deny the results. After the meeting, Ilra walked with Hale outside the chamber. She looked at him carefully. Do you not grieve for those you lost? Hale stopped, turning his eyes toward her. For a moment, the calm mask slipped, and she saw the weight he carried. Of course we grieve. Every one of them is remembered. But grief does not stop us. We carry it forward, because if we do not, their sacrifice means nothing. Ilra lowered her voice. Your people live with pain as if it is a companion. Hale gave a small nod. It is the cost of being children of a death world. While the council argued, the human fleet worked quietly. Engineers repaired damaged ships, welding broken hulls with sparks that lit the docks. Medics treated the wounded, moving with calm hands even as soldiers lay with burns and broken bones. There was no despair in the camps. Instead, there was focus, determination to be ready for the next fight. The Viori came to see for themselves. Captain Cyril walked among the human crews, watching them work. He expected anger, or sorrow, but instead he found something else: resolve. One young human, his arm in a sling, was helping carry supplies with his other hand. Cyril stopped him, frowning. You are injured. Should you not rest? The soldier smiled faintly. Rest later. Work now. My ship still needs me. Cyril did not answer. He simply walked away, unsettled by the quiet strength he saw in even the wounded. News of the human losses reached the colonies, but instead of shaking faith, it built something new. The people of Reiner, saved from destruction, held a ceremony to honor the fallen humans. They spoke their names, carved them into stone, and promised never to forget. For the Viori, it was rare to honor outsiders. But for these humans, it felt right. When Hale heard of the ceremony, he stood quietly, saying only, they will be remembered, even here. In the weeks that followed, the Confederation began to change. Their commanders studied human tactics more closely. Some resisted, but others saw value in learning. Training halls echoed with new drills, sharper, faster, more direct. The idea of sacrifice, once feared, began to take root as something more complex: not the end, but a price sometimes worth paying for survival. Still, the cost weighed heavily. Every council meeting turned into the same debate. Could they afford to follow the human way? Could they survive if they did not? The Zith did not wait for the answer. Scouts reported a massive fleet gathering on the edge of Confederation space, larger than any seen before. The council panicked. Some called for retreat, to abandon border worlds and fall back. Others whispered that perhaps even with the humans, victory was impossible. But Hale stood firm. His words were simple. Then we strike first. The council erupted once more. To them, such an idea was unthinkable. To abandon defense and attack the enemy's own heart was beyond reason. Yet Hale's voice carried certainty. They believe they are unstoppable. If we wait, they will crush us. But if we strike at their core, if we show them they can bleed, then we can change this war. The cost of war was clear now. To the Viori, it was too high. To the humans, it was simply the path to survival. The council was left with a choice: cling to the old way, or follow the Deathworlders into fire. The Sith were gathering. Reports came faster now than ever before, painting a terrifying picture. Entire fleets of their jagged ships moved in tight formations, preparing to strike the Confederation's heart. For the Viori, panic rose like a tide. They had never faced such numbers, not even in their oldest histories. Commander Hale stood on the deck of his flagship, looking at the stars. His black ships glinted faintly in the light of the system's sun. Around him, his officers moved with calm precision, every hand on a console, every eye scanning the void. Hale's face was unreadable, but inside, he calculated, planned, and prepared. The council summoned an emergency session. The chamber was tense, filled with whispers of fear. Viori generals and councillors argued fiercely. Some called for retreat, some for defensive walls around the core worlds. Many believed that even the humans could not save them from this overwhelming force. Hale addressed them simply. We do not retreat. We do not wait for them to break us. We strike first. The council erupted in confusion. Councillor Darrell's face was red. Strike first? Against their entire fleet? Against their home systems? This is suicide. Hale's eyes were steady. It is survival. The Sith believe they are unstoppable because no one has dared strike at their heart. We will show them they are not. Some councillors shook their heads in disbelief. Others hesitated, unsure whether to oppose or follow. Ilra stood quietly, listening, her mind weighing the risks. At last, she spoke. If the humans are right, hesitation will cost everything. We follow them, not blindly, but because we have no other choice. The vote was narrow, but it passed. The annihilation offensive would begin. In the following days, the fleets assembled. Viori ships, sleek and elegant, joined the heavy, black human vessels. Together, they moved through space, forming a massive armada that stretched across kilometers of void. Soldiers prepared in their ships and on landing crafts, medics checked every bay, engineers repaired every system. Every action was deliberate, yet the human crews carried a different energy, a sharp, fierce determination that the Viori had never seen. Hale called his officers together. We strike in 3 waves. The first breaks their outer defenses. The second strikes their fleet heart. The third lands on their capital world itself. Every move must be precise. Every soldier must act without hesitation. The Sith will not show mercy, and neither can we. The fleet approached the Sith border. Scouts reported movement, shadows of countless ships. The first clash came swiftly. The Viori ships fired from distance, their shields flaring with each hit. But Hale's human vessels pressed forward, charging into enemy lines with heavy firepower. Explosions lit the void as ships collided, broke, and burned. The Viori watched in awe. The humans were relentless. Even when their own vessels were damaged, they continued forward, taking risks the Viori could not imagine. Then, the second wave hit the Sith fleet's center. Hale's flagship led the charge. Human ships rammed, fired, and maneuvered with brutal precision. Sith vessels faltered. Their commanders shouted orders, but the humans had already adapted, closing gaps, exploiting weaknesses. Every strike, every move, was calculated for maximum effect. The Viori fleet supported cautiously, their weapons covering the flanks. They saw humans jump into danger and survive, and slowly, some began to imitate their tactics. Where once hesitation ruled, now boldness emerged. After hours of intense combat, the Sith outer fleets were shattered. The humans did not pause. They pressed toward the Sith home system, leading the Viori across a path of fire. The enemy defenses were formidable, but Hale's crews moved with focus and skill born of Deathworld experience. When the Viori saw the Zith capital world, the scale of the challenge became clear. Massive weapon platforms, orbital defenses, and thousands of ships surrounded it. Most would have paused, calculated for weeks, seeking safer options. But Hale did not hesitate. "Now," he said, his voice calm but commanding. "Push forward. Hit hard. Show them Earth does not fear them." The fleet surged forward, breaking through defensive lines. Explosions erupted as ships struck key positions. Boarding teams prepared for planetary assault. The Viori marveled at the coordination, the fearlessness, and the sheer will of the humans. Every strike was precise, every loss intentional, every move part of a larger plan. By the end of the day, the Zith Central Fleet lay in ruins. Their planetary defenses were crippled, and for the first time in centuries, the Zith leadership faced real defeat. The Viori watched silently, no words describing the mix of awe, fear, and hope swelling inside them. Hale looked at the Council communication link, his eyes sharp. "This is only the beginning. If we falter now, all we have fought for is lost. We must continue." Ilra whispered beside her father, Councillor Marone. "These humans, they fight differently. But they may save us all." Hale's words echoed across the fleet. The Annihilation Offensive was underway, and the galaxy had never seen warriors like Earth's Deathworlders. The Zith homeworld burned in the glow of the human-led fleet. Fires from orbital strikes lit the dark surface, while the shattered remnants of the Zith Central Fleet drifted like broken stars. The Confederation watched in disbelief. Never before had the Zith suffered such defeat. Ships that had been thought invincible lay in ruins. Command centers that had been untouchable were now silent. Commander Hale stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the battlefield. His black ships, battered but unbroken, hovered in formation. Around him, his officers worked calmly, noting damage, treating the wounded, and preparing for the next phase. Victory had come, but there was no celebration yet. Survival demanded readiness until the war was fully won. On the ground, human strike teams moved across the Zith capital. Soldiers in heavy armor cleared streets, disarming traps, securing structures, and capturing key communication centers. They fought with precision and discipline, striking only when necessary, conserving life even in a city that had bred cruelty for generations. The Viori watched, astonished at the efficiency and restraint. Captain Cyril, a veteran Viori officer, moved through the command hub beside Hale. "I cannot believe this," he said quietly. "You risked everything, yet your people still act with such control. How do you do it?" Hale's gaze did not waver. "We fight to survive, not to destroy. The Zith will not rise again if we end this right, but we do not need unnecessary death. Strength without control is nothing." In the council chambers of the Confederation, leaders held emergency meetings. They discussed what had happened, what it meant, and how to move forward. Councillor Darrell, who had opposed the humans from the beginning, finally spoke with a tone of respect. "I was wrong to doubt them. Their methods are unlike anything we have seen, but they work. And the price we feared, it was not wasted. Their people carry it as we cannot, and they have saved countless lives." Ilra stood beside him, quietly proud. "The humans come from a world where survival is hard and constant. That is what makes them strong. They endure what others cannot, and they teach us courage in ways we never imagined." Meanwhile, survivors on the Zith homeworld looked up at the stars in fear. The galaxy had changed. A new force had arrived, one that understood the strength of survival, the power of resilience, and the courage to face impossible odds. The humans were no longer strangers. They were a legend, a force forged by a world of death and hardship. Back in space, Hale's fleet regrouped. Some ships were damaged, others lost entirely, but the spirit of the crews was unbroken. They had faced a horde that seemed unstoppable and emerged victorious. The Viori ships, once cautious, now mirrored the humans in small ways, firing with greater precision, moving with more daring. Even the soldiers on the ground began training in new ways, learning lessons from the Deathworlders. Hale gathered his officers in the flagship command room. "This victory is ours," he said. "But do not forget why we fight." The Sith believed they were invincible. They believed no one could oppose them. "We have shown them that even the strongest can fall if they meet those who refuse to yield. Remember this lesson. It is the legacy we leave behind." Captain Cyril nodded. "We have learned more than we could have imagined. Your people, your world has taught us what true strength is." Hale's voice softened slightly, almost a whisper. "Earth did not survive by fear. It survived because we faced it, every day. That is what we bring to the galaxy, a refusal to be broken, even when the odds are impossible." Months passed, and the Confederation rebuilt. Systems once lost to the Sith were restored. Colonies thrived under new security. And everywhere, the story of the humans spread. Children learned about the black ships that carved through the stars. Artists painted them. Writers told their stories. The galaxy remembered how a small, overlooked world changed the course of history. On Earth, Hale and his crew returned briefly, reporting to the leaders of their home world. Yet their thoughts remained in space, among the allies they had saved. They had left a mark not only on the battlefield but on the hearts and minds of the Viori. They were no longer just humans from a distant planet. They were protectors, teachers, and symbols of hope. The Viori would never forget what they had witnessed. In every fleet, in every council, the lesson remained clear: strength was not just in numbers or technology, but in endurance, courage, and the will to survive against all odds. And in every story told across the stars, one simple truth shone brighter than all: Earth's Deathworlders had brought annihilation to the Sith, but more importantly, they had brought survival to the galaxy. The war was won. The Confederation stood stronger than ever. And the humans, forged by a world that refused to give them mercy, had become a legend that would never fade.